The Finance and Property Committee is now in session. All members of the committee are present. Item 2 is contracts and agreements. The first one is review and consider the approval of the 2026 Southwood County Humane Society contract. Does anybody have any questions, comments on the 2026 Humane Society contract and continuing services for 2026? Go ahead.
I have a question. Did we get a description of where the 76,000 came from this year, or was it just in the contract? Okay. And then just to clarify, what we're paying for, the service that we're paying for is only to hold our stray animals for 4 days, pick up any stray animals at their discretion, and then release them. And after the 4-day hold, it's their animal to keep. The contract does not include any of the other items that we've heard that are great that the Humane Society does, such as locating the owner of the animal before they go to the Humane Society, or doing events in the community, posting on social media, etc. That's all that's in our contract. And we don't have anybody here from the Humane Society to speak to it.
It appears not, but it's the same contract as last year. So services we received or Facebook, whatever. I'm assuming they'll operate their organization the same as they did. If it's not in the contract, then technically they're only obligated to fulfill what's in the contract, obviously. But
And then we're only paying for what's in the contract, not any of the other things. It was, the items were never in the contract. I had written a referral to one of the committees, I think this committee, to review what services should be in the contract in August, and there was no discussion of the item. So I assume, and there was no discussion of the item. So I assume that we had the contract adequately outlining what we were paying for. So I was a little shocked when it didn't.
we did take that item out, but I think it was your referral and you weren't here, and so
Right.
we didn't know where you wanted to go with it. But if you want to speak to that now, I mean, we can.
No, the referral itself was pretty self-explanatory, to talk about what services should be in the contract and that it should be our contract to the Humane Society and not the Humane Society's contract to us. That's backwards from every other contract that we do as a city.
Okay. So Jake had talked about this earlier, to just have this time to be able to talk and find out where you wanted to go, if there were questions or if we were just renewing a contract, seeing how we had gone through this rigmarole in the past, and it ended up at the same number anyways. I did go to the Humane Society yesterday. They had an open house, and they said, "Do you want us there?" I said, "At this point in time, I think we're just talking about the contract amongst ourselves. So we'll let you know if we want you there at a later time." So I think at this point, if you guys decide you want the Humane Society to come and answer some questions, we can. Otherwise, it sounds to me like we have their contract. They're not going to change anything in it unless we convince them to. So if we're going to counter their contract with our own contract, I think that's a whole different conversation that we're welcome to have. and where that goes, I don't have an answer for.
Yeah, I think without a description of how they came to the 76, I can't speak to if that's an accurate number or not, based on what they've provided us so far this year on Pink's sheets.
Yeah, so in the end, the response that we got last year was that number is the number that they're providing to us for the entirety of what the services they're providing, regardless of how much they do and what they do. They're saying you got to pay us $76,000 to use our services. I don't know how far it'll go for us to offer them a contract, but we certainly can have that negotiation with them. And again, I think, Tim? Oh, I think the only leverage they have is in our ordinance is that we have to have a contract signed by a certain amount of time, but at the same time, we have time to look into this if we want to pursue bringing them here and talking them, or having me bring them a contract from us to see what their thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I can forward what I sent into the referral again, because that included a draft contract.
Okay. I guess as a committee then, are we asking, yeah, you got it?
Well, this is what I'll say. We went through this pretty thoroughly last year, and a lot of those questions were answered, or a lot of those concerns were addressed as best they can be. They were down here several times because it is the same contract, essentially the same services, and we did this last year, and the council decided to move forward with it. I would like to see this contract continue, unless there is a majority of council that is looking to make changes. And so with that, I'll be making a motion to approve the 2026 Southwood County Humane Society contract. That is not to say that they can't come down further. This will only be, if it passes, a recommendation out of the Finance Committee. But at this point, we went through this last year. We had them down. We talked about a lot of this. I met with them. The mayors met with them. The contract came in at the same amount, and I'm comfortable with where we're at.
To be clear, I absolutely want this contract to continue. I think that the Humane Society does a lot of good in our community outside of this contract, and I appreciate the services they provide. I just, again, as I said last year, the contract that we have with them should accurately reflect the services that they're providing. And right now, and last year, it did not. They came in and they told us they're doing all of these things that are outside of the contract, and that's what we're paying for. But it's not in the contract for us to pay for those. So why would we hire somebody to paint the outside of our house and then we come home and the inside is painted? And surprise, you paid for that too. We should be able to look at the contract and accurately explain to everybody all of the services that they provide for our community, not just select ones that are in there now.
I agree. Yeah, we went through it last year, but I agree with Maddie on this. I think we need to have them break it down. I want to know exactly what they did or what they say they're doing and what they're doing. And I think it should be reflected by the pink slips we got and everything that we got in the previous year, and how they came up with the same number they had last year. So are they doing the exact same thing they did last year if the number is the same? Or I'd like to see a breakdown.
I guess I agree with Jake on this, that, I wasn't there last year for the discussions, but I did see them, and I think they do a great job. I think it might be a little bit late in the year to pressure a new contract on top of that. I feel like we should at least sign this one for next year, and next year during the process have Sue write up a better contract and maybe work it that way next fall. But I would second your motion, Jay.
Thank you. Motion and a second to approve the contract. All those in favor?
Tim's got a question.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
One thing I noticed that in the 26 contract that's not in there that was in the 25 was is that the Southwood Community Society shall carry liability insurance with minimum coverage of $1 million. That phrase in there, that they only have they'll hold the municipality harmless, but last year in the contract was that liability clause that isn't in there this year, and I don't know if that's how important that is. It's probably more of a Sue question, but
Yeah, I mean, it probably is more of a Sue question. Again, this will come as a recommendation from the finance committee. This is by no means finalizing it. So any amendments or changes, or if you'd like them to come down for the final vote on it, which after this discussion, I'm sure they'll be there. Those changes can be made at that time. And whatever this vote is, will be the recommendation out of the finance committee.
and one thing is that in the 25 contract that they said that they would make presentations to the council at the end of quarter 2 and at the beginning of quarter 4. So that could be something that we could put on the November council meeting for them to come down, give that presentation, and then obviously answer any questions that we may have concerning that report and then the 26 contract.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you. There is a motion by me, second by Tim on the floor. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye, or nay.
All right, motion passes 2-1. Contracts and agreements. 2B, review and discuss the agreement for economic development services with the Heart of Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce. And also, again, Stacy was just down here. Contract is in the packet. Same services as last year, came in at the same amount. At this time, we can move to discuss the contract. Tim?
The contract actually states that it renews annually unless either party gives notice. So I guess we're just looking at, from a budgetary standpoint, the $25,000 contract, we're just kind of, I guess, would just be reaffirming that we're going to continue the contract. Doesn't necessarily have to be approved because it just renews until either party gives notice.
Which doesn't, yeah, I mean, if the finance committee recommends renewal or continuing, again, that's the recommendation, and then the contract itself would renew without any changes. Any thoughts on changes?
No, I think that after we had that talk and the number she's shown that they're definitely utilizing funds. We spent enough time trying to figure out what they were doing with it, and I think they're showing that they're utilizing the funds that we give wisely. So I would definitely. Oh, microphone. Sorry. Yeah, I think they're. I think we should continue to renew it. Yes. I'm happy with what they're doing.
I'd agree with Dean. I think they've really stepped up the game and done a lot since I've noticed in the last couple of years. So I would recommend approval.
Yeah, and I agree. If we go back here on kind of where this was, it was more of a budgeted amount, and we would kind of give it to the Chamber of Commerce, and communication wasn't quite the same. If you just got here recently or you just started paying attention recently, you would notice that Stacy comes down a lot more. She's providing us with data. That's just the council aspect of it, is us hearing from them more and getting updates. And behind the scenes, she's working more with the mayor and Kyle and what that contract specifies, because the services weren't necessarily outlined like they are in this contract here. So we've came a long way, and I think we're in a good spot as well. And so, although we don't need to do anything, I'll still make a motion to continued economic development services with the Heart of Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce as it comes out as a recommendation from the Finance Committee.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by myself, second by Veneman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. All right, back to internal. We got the department budgets. First, we'll review and consider for approval the 2026 Waterworks and Lighting Commission budget. Come on up.
All right, thanks for taking the time tonight to review and consider our budget. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Jeff Kuhn. I'm the Chief Financial Officer over at Wisconsin Rapids Waterworks and Lighting Commission. My plan tonight was just to give you a brief overview of the budget and then answer any specific questions you might have on the budget document that we handed out. So the budget you have in front of you was approved by our commission on September 5th after a pretty lengthy discussion. And it might look and feel a little bit different than what you're used to seeing in your regular other city budgets, and that's just because under the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the Public Service Commission, we need to do our accounting and our budget under activity-based accrual accounting. So that means we're accruing revenues, we've got capital assets with depreciation that flow into the operations budget. So a little bit different, but hopefully you're able to kind of understand the differences and kind of see where the utility's going. Just a quick background, we've got 45 employees at the utility. 26 of those FTEs are directed towards the electric utility and 19 are allocated to the water utility. In the budget for 2026, we do not have any staffing increases. We also don't have any planned rate increases for either the electric or the water utilities. So rates should stay the same for 2026. And just reiterate and keep in mind as we're going through the budget, the utility is ratepayer funded. We're not looking for, general revenues from the taxing authority here for offsetting any of the utility costs. And the capital projects that we're aware of that the city's doing, those are included in the budget where those common projects happen. So as far as we know, everything that the city is doing, that the utility needs to do are included in our project costs there. So our budget itself is broken into two main sections. The first half of the budget is the capital budget, and the second half is the operations budget. If you look at page 3 of our budget, it kind of gives you a high-level overview. We're looking at total capital spend of $6.973 million, about a 12% increase from our 6-year average if you take a look at the last 6 years of what we're doing. But there's a couple large projects, particularly in the electric utility side, that we can take a quick look at and understand why that number is where it is. Page 4 gives you a breakout of the projects in summary for the electric utility. Total's about $4.5 million, or it's about 65% of the capital spend for the utility. Some of the big projects, just wanted to point out, there's a multi-year project for the high school substation over by Lincoln High School, looking to about double the size of that substation with a new control building and just make it more resilient and more reliable for future service going forward. The other big number to point out is the municipal conflicts, which is right above that line. Those are the projects that the utility needs to move our electric facilities because of the city projects. And the big one there is everything going on East Jackson, primarily the street lighting that's going up to First Street. So there's a lot of costs there for the electric utility. Most of the other projects are, similar to prior years and the projects that we have continuing going every year with the utility. For the water
Excuse
utility,
me.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Before you get too far ahead,
Mhm.
so you mentioned in the capital budget amounts, there's a large increase from 25 to 26, and you talked to that being ongoing projects. What are those?
So the main two projects this year that weren't in prior year budgets was the starting of that high school substation,
Yeah.
redoing, and then just the municipal conflict costs this year are a little bit higher because primarily we have budgeted for the streetlights going up East Jackson Street.
Yeah.
So those will be the decorative streetlights that you have down here on West Grand and are pretty costly.
Okay, and these are projects that are not typically in other years, like the high school substation. So are we typically in like maintenance mode for the most part, and that's what taking on a new project will
This
jump that number up?
Sure, this project in total is about a $3.6 million project over 4 years, the high school sub-project. Usually we're not doing that large of projects within the high school substations or any of our substations, so that one's a little bit larger project than we've been doing.
Okay. thank you.
Primarily, I mean, we'll have like the electric additions where they'll be changing out old poles or doing some undergrounding of some different neighborhoods or something like that, and we've got some of that in there. But it's just kind of those two projects are kind of pushing up the electric budget this year.
Thank you.
So page 7 is the water department capital budget, and again, the primary driver of the cost of the water department is the water main projects. Page 8 walks through the different projects, particularly with the water main, and you can see most of the water main projects have lasted their estimated useful life, again, with the exception of East Jackson Street. That was put in 1979. Still has a little bit of life, but with the road reconstruction and just the reconfiguration of everything down there, we have to move our facilities. The other one just wanted to bring up is the bulk water filling station. The utility's looking at installing an automated bulk water system, so contractors have 24/7 access to be getting bulk water for their tanker trucks, or the watering, if they're watering the lawns, have that ability to do that with an automated system. Right now, they need to come to the utility between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. to fill up, and it's a little bit hard to get into the location where they have to fill up, so this will make that a little bit easier for contractors coming into the city. The other two areas, the IT department and the common budgets, you can see those two numbers. It's about $735,000. For the two together, it's about 10% of the total capital budget. Probably the biggest in the IT is the substation access control. We had a Department of Homeland Security audit late last year, and they made a few recommendations to kind of harden the access to some of the substations, and that's what that project is doing. And then in the common plant, the biggest cost there is doing a lobby remodel just to make it a little bit more safer, make it ADA accessible, and flow a little bit better that way. Any questions on any of the capital projects that were laid out in the budget? If not, we can look at, starting on page 15 is the operations side. So when we have expenditures, we talked about the capital expenditures, which are those bigger items. The operations, more of the day-to-day items that the utility does to run the utility, and then the corresponding revenues. For those of you that don't know or don't recall, heavily regulated by the Public Service Commission. They're the ones that set the utility rates for us, so we don't have that ability to raise rates unless we go to the Public Service Commission and request a rate increase. So when they're looking at rate increases, they're using a rate of return. And that's kind of what page 15 is showing, our historical rate of return. So when we go in for a rate case, they're going to take a look at a test year expenditures, and they're going to say, we're going to build revenues to cover your test year expenditures, and then we're going to give you an additional rate of return on your assets, your net assets that you have. So you've got money to reinvest back into the system and can fund these projects without having to borrow money. So when we went in for our last electric rate case in 2023, that rate was set at 6%. Now that doesn't mean we can't go above 6% if expenses are low for a year or revenues are high for a particular year, but 6% was kind of that where we're going to set those rates at. And in 2026, we're expecting the electric utility to be at 4.66%, so slightly ticking down, which kind of makes sense because we're in the third year of that rate case now. So as we're adding assets, you know, that denominator of that calculation is getting a little bit lower, and as costs go up, The income's not quite as high, but still a pretty healthy 4.66%, pretty close to where we anticipate 2025 ending at 4.4%. And really, when you take a look at it, expenditure is pretty much in line. It's pretty amazing when you look at the utilities budget, how consistent the expenditures stay, except for those project-type things that we do from year to year. The biggest increase is going to be the cost of purchase power. That's about a 2.6% increase from where we expect 2025 to be. Really outside of the control of the utility, a good chunk of that is transmission costs that are going up from ATC and from MISO on those costs.
And so going forward, there's all this talk about energy right now and power and the demand and the stress on the grid. So locally, just here in central Wisconsin, do you expect numbers like you just stated to continue to be what people see as an increase from year to year? Or are you expecting that to hit us locally too?
I think when you take a look at what's going on nationally, I mean, there's a huge drive to update all the transmission system. So that's baked into our rates and how much we're paying for all those transmission projects that are being done. And then you're paying a rate of return to the transmission owners to use those lines. And the other side, as more renewables come online, you still need that backup system for when those renewables aren't there. So now you're paying for, the solar that's been built, you're paying for the battery if they put battery there, and then you still got another generating source if it's, a natural gas plant or something like that. So now you're paying for more assets. Again, which those providers are earning their rate of return on. So this trend will probably continue, would be the short answer.
The trend in what rates are right now, or the trend in?
And kind of slowly ticking up year after year.
And can you speak to those local solar projects?
Not to a great extent. Todd Weiler, our general manager, has kind of been working on that. So, and he unfortunately had a prior commitment and couldn't be here tonight. But I just know Great Lakes Utility, who's our power provider, is looking at placing several solar arrays in neighboring community or their communities to kind of help with the power supply that they purchase from, and they're still in that initial design phase at this point with all the communities.
But when they add those assets,
Mhm.
is what the panels become in the backup storage. Then that gets built into how the rates are calculated. Or do you want to explain? I probably
Correct.
may not
So,
have
I
said
mean,
that right, but
in this specific instance, I mean, we're looking at a long-term purchase power agreement, or Great Lakes Utilities looking at a long-term purchase power agreement with the installer of that solar array. So it's not utility owned, it's owned by a third party, and we're paying that third party for the generation that occurs on that grid.
which can increase rate prices.
That's, again, as you're looking at power supply, you're going to have different contracts, stagger them out, and this one that they're looking at right now would be a fixed cost for the next 30 years, so it was a pretty attractive price.
I appreciate your input on this. Todd is working hard. Obviously, we had a release to put the whole conversation on the planning commission. We then got a ton of phone calls, and we realized we need to do some more marketing and due diligence. So right now, Todd and Adam are putting together a lot more information to bring you the full picture of what it looks like and what's going on, to be presented soon, and then it'll be on the December's planning commission to talk about it in full and have a public hearing on it. So that a lot of that information will be being brought to us in the near future, just so you know.
Us meaning it's going to go to the planning commission and then come through council.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to, excuse me, try to do release more information to the public, just information, data, statistics, and that. We can bring it to the planning commission. If you want us to bring it here, we certainly can to the finance and property meeting also, and then eventually it would go to the commission after that, yep, or to the council, sorry.
Yeah, I would like it to come here based on the property aspect, especially what's being considered, and discuss that
Yep.
part of it specifically.
Yeah, I think it's good. I don't think right now would be the best time to try to dive
Yeah,
too
no,
far
I'm-
into it.
I'm not. I
Okay.
was more specifically into how it worked with rates and the assets and when those things come online.
Appreciate it.
I can tell you in the budget that we're looking at today, there's no costs associated with any of that project in 2026. The last piece of the budget is the water utility. Again, pretty similar. We're looking at about a 3.7% rate of return. 2025 was 2.46%. The main difference was in 2025, we had to clean 2 of our radial wells at a cost of about $450,000. So every 10 to 12 years, those wells need to be cleaned because they just get debris and iron kind of in there and need to be cleaned to keep them efficient. So that's essentially why that bump up in income from 25 to 26. Any questions on any of the budget?
While we have you here, I would just ask one more question about the utility, the budget, all the different things with the rates. So being a city-owned utility, what are the benefits to the city and the ratepayers compared to, let's say, a private entity? If you could speak to that.
Sure,
for
I'd
the
say the
public.
biggest benefit to the city would be the pilot payment that the utility makes to the city. We're anticipating that to be about $1.6 million in 2026. So that's the amount the electric and water utilities pay to the city. The other side is lower rates. If you had an investor-owned utility, their main goal is paying shareholders, and you're making sure you're paying shareholders, and they're looking at a big decision on, if you're going to build something is you're going to want plant and service because that's what you earn a rate of return on. So if you can put another $1 million of plant in service on your system, you're going to earn a rate of return on that, where I feel the local control and the local decision-making here in Rapids, we're looking at what's the best project to do and not what's necessarily the most expensive project to do. I would say those are probably the 2 biggest benefits, along with having, your linemen and your water guys are right here next door. You need, something happens, we have an outage, we have a water main break, and they're here within minutes and not waiting for a couple of hours as you would with an investor-owned utility.
Excellent explanation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions? All right. Thank you for coming down tonight.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, on to 3B, review and discuss the 2026 street department budget. Paul?
Thank you. Alderperson Tim, I'm just going to pick on you. I don't want to take anything for granted, but do you want me to go through our whole, who we are, what we do, everything like that, being that's your first time?
I think I know that, but, so you can go on to the rest, yep.
Okay. I'm just going to skip it for the sake of your time and everybody else's time here. So our department budget summary is on page 147 of the packet. Unfortunately, we do not have a budget that is just strictly in one financial spot. So we're going to have to kind of jump around and everything like that. I do have to make one correction as far as staffing level goes. The chart on the bottom is partially incorrect, just because back in, I believe it was August, the HR committee, September 8th, I'm sorry. I went to the HR committee and requested to take our 2 LTE positions and create 1 FTE out of it. So that doesn't reflect the staffing levels there. But I know where we're at with things, and the likelihood of that happening may be low, but still requested it. So that's the only change that I have to the staffing levels. We do currently have 1 vacancy that is on hold to be filled, with our administrative assistant leaving in late August, early September. My hope and request again would be to fill that position just because of, of what that person does for not only me and the supervisors, but for our staff and everything like that as well. We also, with the efficiencies that were created in the last 2 years, with doing electronic timesheets and things like that, there have been some roles that she has, or that position no longer has responsibility to do. But, since 2008, we've had reduction in our staffing levels by 4 FTEs. And so there are some people that are kind of doing 1.25, 1.5 roles. And so having that position, being able to help out reducing some of that workload from those people would be beneficial. And so moving forward, our 2025 accomplishments, we put down a lot of mastic, 87,000 pounds of mastic. If you have further questions about this stuff, you can stop me or whatever, but as of September, we only had 312 tons of asphalt that we put down for hand patches, another 300 tons of paver patches that were done on our streets. We had 3 pavement replacement projects this year that were completed, 13th Street South from Chestnut to Daly Avenue, East G Street from 13th Street South over to 16th Street South, and then kind of a combo project, Park Street turns into 13th Avenue South, so from 2nd Avenue South to 13th Avenue South there, it's kind of a goofy situation there. We also reconstructed, we're going to be finishing it here this week, the Dixon Hotel parking lot right across the street. Was a extremely needed project there on 4th Avenue. Again, our annual chip sealing projects are 175,000 square yards, approximately 8.5 miles. We put a new wear surface on. A collection of approximately 3,500 tons of garbage, 770 tons of recycling, again, just through September. Because of the lack of winter, we have removed only 900 tons of sand or other debris from our road surfaces that we've had to take to the landfill. Traditionally, if we had a higher winter of snow events or ice events, there probably would be more sand salt put on some of our residential streets. So again, the lack of that kind of dictates that. With our construction projects and providing kind of some assistance to other city and municipal organizations that don't necessarily have the same equipment that we do. We did restoration of approximately 6 acres of green spaces, again, construction projects, WRPS projects that they've had throughout the community, and then our maintenance activities. Our construction projects this year, I'm not going to get into specifics, but Plover Street from 1st Street North to Apricot Street is where we started out the year. 14th Avenue North on the west side here from West Grand Avenue to Fremont Street. And then we're currently waiting for the asphalt contractor, which is going to be in on Monday, to finish McKinley Street from 8th Avenue North all the way down to 14th Avenue. And then also Harrison Street was our last project from 9th Avenue over to 7th Avenue. Then also in the 2025 calendar year, the American Public Works Association, which is an organization that is all public works employee or managers, employees, organizations, I guess is the best word for it. They created a management of snow and ice excellence award. They based it off of population sizes, and we were fortunate to win that through the state of Wisconsin, but then they take it to the national level, and we weren't successful at the national level. So just something that we put towards. Goals and objectives. Years ago we had
Before you get too far, Paul, go back to the mastic.
Yeah.
You made it sound like that was quite a bit of material. Where are we placing the majority of that material?
So mastic is a product that is similar to crack filling, and what it is
It is flexible enough to move with the contraction and the expansion of our roadways, but it's rigid enough if, I know you're a motorcyclist, but so if you drive motorcycle and you hit crack filler, it's gonna move you around. Mastic is a little bit thicker of material that it won't dictate where you're going with your motorcycle or whatever, so it's a little bit more safer. So mastic we're putting on the state highways that, you know, are well past their life, and our asphalt streets, but simply to try to help keep that joint together. It's a process in trying to extend the life of that. You know, so that tonnage that we put out, or the pounds that we put out there, probably 60% of that was put on A Street. The other portion of it was put on the East Riverview Expressway, and then again, Highway 34, because there were joints that were failing that weren't bad enough to go through and replace the joint yet, or do a joint repair project on it. So again, we're just trying to push that out, you know, 10, 15 years. There's been studies by the DOT that they're getting, you know, obviously like cold patch, you're getting 3 months to 1 year's worth of life out of cold patch. Where mastic, you're getting anywhere from 4 to 6 or 8 years out of it. But what's happening on our streets is that some of them have what they call a microfracture, where it's actually failing outside of the mastic patch, you know, because of the age of the concrete. So, but for the most part, it's on state highways and our concrete streets and things like that.
So you figure 60% approximately, or more? 60%?
Well, the majority of that is on state highways.
Okay.
But
Okay.
60% of that was put on A Street just to try to get through that, the construction year.
Can you speak to the cost of that specifically? And can you provide how much money we receive from the state to maintain our connecting highways?
Tim, do you have that? Isn't it like what we get from the DOT for our, I think it's like 370,000, isn't it? Didn't it just go up? Yeah.
So the 400,000 is for maintenance of the connecting highways, though. Is that accurate? So we're talking like snow removal, I mean, complete maintenance, construction, anything else that I'm missing beyond that?
Concrete patches.
Concrete patches? So
Full
that's
patch.
where the 400,000 is.
We're reimbursed per lane mile.
Yep.
and, You know, and so, yeah, that goes to maintain those.
And what do you think the mastic cost us this year?
So in 2025, I would say that we probably had $150,000 budgeted. Again, we did not have all the labor in that we originally budgeted for. We traditionally budget 20 days, and we were only able to go, sorry, I'm doing the math in my head, 15.
Okay.
So, and again, I would say that of that 150,000, we probably spent 125.
125 on mastic on the connecting highways. And then on top of that, we're doing concrete patching as well on the connecting highways, right?
Correct, yep.
Do you have a total on how much we spent on concrete patching?
It's about 200,000 annually.
200,000. So we're burning up, on maintenance, we're burning up the entire allotment basically from the state, just in that patchwork. And then we have snow removal and all that on top of that's intended to fund, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I just want to make the point here on how costly those roads are getting for us, right?
Yeah, and that's where, I believe, we just found out here in last month where they're actually have now kind of given us an estimate as to, because I'm going to say it wrong probably, 2028, we're going to be redoing Second Avenue, and then 30 is numeration because they had monies released that we would be doing the West Riverview Expressway from Second Avenue to Grand Avenue, and then in 32, the East Riverview Expressway from the river up to A Street.
Okay, thank you.
Because again, those were all built in the, except for Second Avenue, that I believe was built, redone in 2004. But the expressway, you know, was kind of the middle, early 70s to late 70s, you know, so they're all past their life. So I think I lost my train of thought, but I think, thanks, Ryan. So goals and objective, again, continue to process and implementation of our 12-year maintenance plan. For those of you that aren't aware of that, what we did is we took in and split the entire city based off of lane miles in relatively 12 equal sites. Hearing from residents and taxpayers that, you know, 1 year we're doing something in front of their house and 3 years later we're doing it chip sealing in front of their house, and then 3 years later we're doing it on the other one when they live in the corner. So instead of traversing from one side of town to the other side of the town, we're working in that area. Way more cost effective because that equipment only moves at 10, 15 miles an hour. So we're in an area, we get all the maintenance done prior to the chip sealing, and then we move on. So again, you can't just quit cold turkey. You got to take care of bad spots, you know. So, but for the most part, we're doing all of our work in those areas. Continue to look at, you know, there's things are moving, things are changing. There's new efficiencies that are created every year. So continue to look at efficiencies and better maintenance practices, different types of equipment, so that we don't continue to do things the way that we have always continued to do things. Again, we've had a fair amount of turnover in our staff over the last 5 years. So continue to provide the necessary training to get the new and even some of the older staff better prepared to understand what their role is and how we do business and what we're trying to accomplish. Another goal is to have zero work accidents. They may have talked about it in previous finance and properties, how our workman's comp has increased, you know, and that's because of injuries. So obviously workman's comp increasing, less money for us to accomplish what we need to. And then another project is just to implement an electronic storeroom and fleet maintenance so that we can track when it's the right time to get rid of equipment, you know, make better decisions or make good decisions in that aspect. So any other questions before I go on?
How do you track it now, Paul?
So right now, the first week of the year, I have a staff member or multiple staff members go through and write down, go in an Excel spreadsheet, look to see how many hours or miles we put on a piece of equipment for the year. It's traditionally the first week of January, so it's relatively consistent. Otherwise, it's in a 3-ring binder that tracks the oil changes, or when we did last services, and then file folders that tracks, you know, per piece of equipment what we did and everything like that. So nothing is associated with the how much we spent on it or anything like that. You know, you can look up the parts that we put into it, but to me it's old school way, but it's still a way. So just again, how I said that we're kind of all over the place in the budget packet. So the work our department is responsible for is spread out through multiple sections. Bike trail maintenance is on page 107. We participate in our construction projects, curb and gutter, sidewalk maintenance, and concrete pavement maintenance. That work is budgeted and completed by our engineering department, so Joe will be going over that. We also are funded by storm sewer maintenance, or the storm sewer maintenance accounts, so we're responsible for storm sewer maintenance and street sweeping. That comes out of that budget. Those are on page 142 and 143. And then our general maintenance accounts, street administration, training, street repair and maintenance, snow and ice control, brush and weed control, street signs and markings, garbage collection and disposal, recycling, composting, and then maintenance of other city property. And then our pavement replacement program, those are on pages 152 through 163. Just going through then through the highlights, unless I have it separated out after this, all of our street budgets or our budgets are based off of, for 2026, are relatively similar to the same activity that we completed in 2025, except for the increase or possible increases in wages, equipment rental, and estimated material costs. There is a reflection in reduction of our street administrative costs. Recycling and composting is a reduction due to our new hire would not be making the same wage that our previous administrative assistant was making, and so that is reflected in that as well. We were able to do that prior to it being submitted. I will say that this original budget, I believe, was submitted in July. Since then, the last week and a half, I have made some changes to it, so you may have seen that when the second version has come out with additional reductions, and I'll just speak to those when we get to them. The salaries and wages, because we have multiple classifications within our department, I simply took, and with the wage scale, somebody might be at step 3, somebody might be at step 7. So I simply took those wages and averaged them out throughout the number of employees or whatever that we have. So bike trails, which I said was on page 107. Majority of that work is done by contractors. The contractor was able to complete 3 of the 5 years of work that I thought that I identified. And so based off of that and just, I guess, trying to do my part, I was able to reduce the materials $4,750 down to $8,000, which is roughly 38% to complete the 4th year. I don't really want to take a year off from doing the work just because it may be hard to get that back. So I think we can stay at this level or whatever for the next 3 years to complete that work. Our street department training, which is on page 153. Doing some research, found out that our OSHA 10 training that we do traditionally annually is not required to do annually. It's more of a refresher course and things like that. Then also we are on a biannual process for our training and our forklift training. So we're able to reduce the hours that we have in that because we don't have to have the whole work group trained in that. But we also have to send 2 additional staff to CDL training in Michigan. We have 2 employees that don't have their CDL, which that's included in there. And then I would like to, because of the constant change in equipment and electronics and things like that, I would like to send the mechanic group to a couple different day trainings that they feel is necessary. I said earlier that we did 175,000 square yards of chip sealing. This year, we've already identified the areas, already have it mapped out and measured out. So this year, we only need to do 165,000 to complete the area that we're doing things in, so that's approximately 7 miles. The mastic patching that we have to do is more of a touch-up, so we should not be using as much material, still take the time. So after the initial submittal that was submitted back in July, I found a reduction of $73,342 in our material costs, an $8,700 or $86.85 reduction in contracted services. When the county comes in to do the mastic with us, they send us 2 staff members with to run the kettle because it's could be dangerous if we didn't really know what we were doing. So like I said, talking earlier to Mr. Austin's question, the last few years we've been hammering on the A Street and the highways, And now it's just going back and kind of touching up the areas that have shown up. So it's, in my opinion, we're not going to have to use as much material that we have been in the past. Street signs and markings, page 157, you're going to see an increase in labor. We have tried to switch to speed things up, and I believe that it is speeding it up, but we've had to add a little bit of time by our traffic control staff member to provide traffic control behind these guys painting during the day. And so that's just reflection of his time to that work order or work group. Also, as you see in the, or saw in the staffing, that work group has been together now for the second year, but it's really been a new work group for the last 3 years. It has been budgeted to have a lead worker down in that area. I think it's warranted, and so there is money in the budget to promote one of those work persons to a lead worker. Like I said, I feel that it's warranted to keep operations going. They relatively work under limited supervision, especially when they come in at night for a month and a half or whatever to paint roads and things like that. So again, after the initial submittal, I also had in the initial submittal purchasing banners for the Grand Avenue corridor for Christmas decoration, or for the Christmas decorations, and there really is not much needed besides that because of it being the honor walk for our veterans. So I had thought about getting flag banners to go intermix because the last few years they have not been able to cover the whole entire area. I'm going to be able to do some of that this year, but again, in sake of trying to do our part, I've reduced it. We'll just strictly do the lights and the garland around the poles like we have been, and not have banners on those poles. Garbage collection, page 158. There is increased cost there. Our inventory for 96-gallon carts has dwindled. We're getting down to bare bones here. And so I have monies in there to purchase an additional 150 carts. Sanitary landfill, that's actually the tipping fees for garbage collection. Page 159. Was anticipating a 5% increase. That increase came here already in September. So my budgeted rate was $51.90, and the actual rate is $51.82. So we're okay there. If we want to go after pennies, we can possibly adjust that if we want to. Recycling collection, page 160. Contract, again, the payments reflect a 5% increase. The rate in September here was budgeted to be $65.40. The actual rate is $71.58. I am trying to find the person. I have not spoke to them in a few years, and there's been a change at the Portage County Recycling Center to see, we are not under contract for our recycling with Waste Management, but Plover is not that far away. We've had to go there but in the past, so take a look at that to see if that transfer station would be interested in our material or not. At one time they were, and then would like to adjust or look at that cost to see if it's makes sense or not. Composting, page 161. Again, we've been doing things over the last 2 or 3 years where we're selling our raw compost. And so now I have a better handle as to what we're really spending on the compost site. So that I feel pretty confident in. After the initial submittal, or the original submittal, I had a gatekeeper there for more of the year than what the extended hours are. And so I can reduce that back just to our normal stuff, and have a reduction of that $7,800, which is shown in that already. Our pavement replacement plan, Page 163, this is, I guess, the leftover, funded by the leftover from the transportation utility. The projects that I have in there are 22nd Avenue from Wickham Avenue to Bull Street, Wickham Avenue from 23rd to 21st. Those streets are in pretty rough shape, so some of it is going to be an actual pavement replacement with subgrade improvement and gravel, and then the other stuff is just a mill and overlay. Durabeauty Lane from 10th Avenue to the railroad tracks, and then as Mr. Kuhn had said, there's a water project on Lincoln Street from, or sorry, on Pepper Avenue from Lincoln Street to 12th Street. What we've done in the past with those projects is simply remove the asphalt to the center line of the road because the water main is close to the curb, do our work, and then redo that lane of traffic. I'm proposing, so that we have pavement life of the same across from curb to curb, I'm proposing that we mill the south half of the road off and then put a new surface on it, because there is a lot of water main breaks that have happened, especially on that east section from 8th Street to 12th Street. Then the whole thing is going to have a good ride instead of just the westbound traffic or whatever. Again, those projects originally were budgeted all using contracted services. I'm working with Wood County Highway. Because of Act 10, there's restraints as to what work that they can do for us. It's defined by maintenance, and then there's a certain criteria that defines the maintenance. And so I feel that they would be able to do the Durabeauty project for us, which again, if we can get them to commit to that, that would be an additional reduction of $10,000 that is not currently reflected at all. So total reductions that were submitted on 10/23 were $103,577. Any questions on that?
Paul, can you explain incidental labor?
Incidental labor is the addition to what our hourly rate is that covers, I believe, our paid time off, our insurance, and those other benefits.
Yeah, it's a calculation I do each year. What I do is I look at, the total, all the cost system employees, which is street, engineering, park and rec, wastewater, and I calculate all their benefits, plus additional time off, sick time, workers' comp, all that. And then what I do is that I look at what the direct labor is, and that what I mean by direct labor is what they charge when they're actually performing a task, maintenance, or construction. And I divide that into it to come up with a rate that cover those expenses that are built into all the maintenance and construction accounts throughout the budget.
So I just wanted to point out and commend Paul. When we first got the budget and we know what the deficit we were at, he came forward and brought the amount, the 103,000, that has helped us trim that down. So we still are looking for the rest, but he came forward and was able to provide that for us. So I thank him for that. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Ballard? Anything else you wanted to point? Oh.
No, the only other part that's part of this is, of the budget narrative, is our equipment replacement plan, which this committee approved that back in April. And so we've started that process, but not all of that stuff has been allocated yet, or not allocated, but set up, just the stuff that was going to take us the duration to get it. So that's all that other diagram is. It's the same thing that was submitted back in April.
One quick question, Paul, on the compost sites, do out-of-city residents pay to use that?
Yes, so probably the last 4 or 5 years, every single year we look at it. At one time, the non-resident rate was $25, and this year, I believe we were at 70 or 75. So what we do is we take the cost to operate it, the gatekeepers do their best to keep track of the usage, and we strictly base the cost off of the usage from the previous year.
Thank you. That's it.
Paul, are we looking at having any carryover this year?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? And what happens if there is carryover? Where do those funds go?
Well, in any particular, like, say, the general fund, you know, any revenues in excess of expenditures in the whole fund, that'd be all the budgets in there. That's closed out, and that's what kind of builds our reserves. If you remember this year, at the end of '24, we had about approximate $400,000 operating surplus, and we used that to reduce the amount that we had to borrow for the street construction. If there's a specific project or something that wasn't completed in the previous year, a lot of times as part of our budget amendment that we do each year, we will carry those funds forward to pay for that project that was not completed in the previous year.
Thank you.
Right. I guess, Ryan, there is a good chance that, you know, our snow and ice, you know, I don't obviously have the crystal ball to see what's going to happen in November and December or whatever, but, you know, as of September 30th, you know, we're in pretty decent shape as far as what we have. So, I mean, if we don't get snow before Christmas or after Christmas, there might be some there. You know, I mean, that's one thing I didn't touch on is that we did reduce the amount of salt that we're going to buy this year, just strictly because the salt shed is full. So, you know, a lot of people are getting early fills right now, and I don't have any early fill because it's full.
All right, thank you, Paul. On to the next, 3C, which is review and discuss the 2026 engineering department budget. Joe?
All right, thank you. So beginning on page 59 of the budget document, or page 149 of the packet, is the engineering department summary report. Just so overall staffing levels remain unchanged. There's 6 years identified there. Staffing levels are proposed to remain the same. I guess for 2026, our overall goals and objectives are to primarily create successful projects. We've got almost 2 miles of roadway and utility infrastructure improvements that are totaling about $15 million worth of improvement costs in 2026. Besides that, just continued efforts with some other ongoing projects such as the city sidewalk plan, as well as updating sewer and water specifications and general engineering, housekeeping. So moving on to the engineering department budget. We are showing a 5.9% decrease in this budget, which is somewhat fluctuates with engineering labor based upon the workload and the projects that we have in any given year, and the time it takes to get through those projects through construction season. In addition, you'll notice the cell phone stipend reduction of $7,000. That was previously in the engineering department budget. That's for the Diggers Hotline locates, so that those dollars are being budgeted in the appropriate utility accounts to cover those fees, and are being moved out of the engineering department budget. And by all means, if there's any questions at any point, feel free to ask. But moving on to sidewalk maintenance, the sidewalk maintenance is primarily our sidewalk cutting that we do at each of the sidewalk joints. It's a cost-effective method to maintain our sidewalks in safe walking condition. In 2025, we accomplished 2,800 lineal feet of joint cutting and are proposing the same amount for 2026.
Joe, just one question here, just to back up to department budget. You got an increase in equipment. Can you just speak to what that is?
The equipment fees, I believe that's largely vehicle equipment.
Right, we calculate internal rates for all our equipment, so what I do is I put together a budget for our fleet maintenance account, and I also factor in their depreciation. And then I look at what the previous year's usage was and what the rate was, and then I calculate a rate based on what we need to cover that. And in that instance is that there were some additional vehicles that weren't accounted for in the engineering department and got added.
Okay.
To that.
All right, so moving on to the traffic signal maintenance budget. There is a 7.7% increase between labor dollars, cell service costs, and traffic consultant fees. We do have dollars included in there for such thing as traffic counts, speed studies, some pavement marking, some signage, based on need that come out of some of the safety studies that we're performing out of the engineering department. There's also included in there railroad preemption testing, which is new in the last 2 years, so we budgeted for it in 2025, and as the first initial year of doing it, and then proposing to do it annually based on the Office of Commissioner of Railroads requirement to have those tested annually with the railroad company. In addition to that, we've got kind of as-needed services in there for a traffic consultant, and in the case of a service call for TAPCO, which is a traffic signal supplier, as well as some miscellaneous materials for controllers or pedestrian push buttons or detector replacements as needed. But Water and Light does a great job at keeping the traffic signals operational, and so you can see in there is a fee budgeted for that service to keep the signals up and running. On page 64 is the engineering replacement fund. Each year, $9,000 is set aside for engineering replacement for various equipment, surveying equipment mostly. We don't have any proposed expenditures coming out of that fund in 2026. The next expenditure that's in the replacement plan is in 2027 for a robotic total station. And then jumping ahead here to the Public Works Construction Fund.
Before you do that, Joe, just one question on traffic signal maintenance. You got an actual of 86,000 and a budget of 173. Do you see us burning that up yet this year?
It's largely dependent. The single biggest item in there is based on traffic accidents. And so if we have one accident that takes out a traffic controller, we'll burn through that.
Okay, thank you.
So moving into the Public Works Construction Fund, each of the, funds within there, street construction, water main construction, sanitary sewer construction, storm sewer construction, they all have their own separate budget. Primarily, we are looking at doing several projects. Some of the major ones include 2nd Street North. That's a full reconstruction. We also have East Jackson Street. 16th Street South, right next to Waterworks and Lighting Commission. That's a full reconstruction. And then we'll also have some other more unique costs or projects that include the West Side Interceptor project, which is a large sewer lining project. And we also have a couple TID projects this year, but I'll kind of walk through each of those. The one item, or one project that's listed, Apricot Street from 15th Street to 17th Street North, that was originally proposed, but was since removed from the proposed budget for a couple reasons, primarily labor costs and review of the construction season and the amount of work that we were already doing. It was appropriate to remove that project for this year, and we'll reposition that in the capital improvement plan. So with the Public Works Construction Fund, there's $3.3 million worth of project expenses proposed between street, water, sanitary, and storm sewer. Another notable item is that the contingency is shown. The contingency is shown in each of the funds, so that's attributed to each of those, so it's available during the budget year. If anybody has any questions about any of the project specifics, there are also project summaries included in the budget packet. Does anybody have any questions on the Public Works Construction Fund? Okay. All right, moving on to the traffic control outlay on page 126. So there's $333,000 proposed in that budget, primarily for two projects. One is the 32nd Street Railroad grade crossing. We were requested to do it by the Office of Commissioner of Railroads to file a petition of alteration for that crossing to somewhat correct some physical improvements that were done 30-some years ago. And so we have a proposal and a plan for that to be accomplished in 2026 for roughly $40,000. And then also the grant-funded signal improvements at 8th and Expressway and Plover Road and Washington Street at a cost of about $250,000. About $225,000 of the $333,000 budget is funded via grant. Moving along to sidewalk construction. So this would be somewhat synonymous with sidewalk maintenance, but called sidewalk construction. It is the removal and replacement of sidewalk panels. The areas for both sidewalk construction and, we'll get to it in a little bit here, but the curb and gutter maintenance for 2026, they all follow this maintenance cycle. The city was divided into 12 maintenance areas. Paul talked about it briefly. And, in an attempt to be more efficient, cover the areas that we need to, and then not be back in those areas and disturb them for a period of 12 years. So with that, we've started getting into the areas the last couple of years with our sidewalk, curb and gutter maintenance, working to calibrate our condition assessment of both the sidewalk and curb, what constitutes the best use of funds. And so we're still calibrating some of those and looking to kind of catch up a little bit with where they're at with chip sealing activities. So we've got 2 areas proposed for both sidewalk and curb maintenance. And the sidewalk construction, there is a 27.5% increase, or about $73,000. So in 2025, we completed about 2,000 feet of sidewalk removal and replacement, and in 2026, we're proposing 4,000 lineal feet of sidewalk replacement. And I guess just to stay consistent with talking about the maintenance activities, I'll move the, jump to the curb and gutter maintenance as well, and that's on page 141. So there's a much bigger increase here that's being proposed, again, trying to stay at pace with the 12 maintenance cycle, or 12-year maintenance cycle. So 84% increase, or roughly $185,000. In comparison, in 2025, we replaced about a half mile, 2,300 lineal feet of curb. And in 2026, or at least what's proposed here, is increasing that to 4,000 lineal feet, so about 3/4 of a mile. Any questions on that so far?
Joe, that's the replacement of the gutters that have kind of fallen in and don't provide water flow anymore? That's kind of what that is?
Yep. And so there's a couple of the condition assessments we do for the curb and gutter is if it stops flowing water, either it's heaved up or sunken, those are ones that are the highest priority, followed by ones that are missing the curb head itself. But other than that, just the aesthetic cracks and deficiencies, those are things that we have to let slide and until they get more severe.
And you've outlined those already this year for next year, or is it kind of figured out in the spring kind of thing?
Yeah, so we do get out to do inspections the year before. In some cases, we complete inspections throughout the entire area. In some instances, we get a good sampling and then project out, based on how much infrastructure is actually left that we didn't get to inspect yet. Assuming that condition or rate of replacement or deficiency continues throughout the rest of that area.
So Joe, this is just areas that are repaired, or is this also including reconstruction projects?
So the maintenance areas?
This is just repair maintenance areas. It's
Yeah.
not including any new construction.
Right,
Okay.
yep. So moving on to TID number 7, that's the downtown TID. That is on page 128. There are 3 projects proposed in TID 7. The railroad optimization project, the East Jackson Street project, and then the Riverwall maintenance project. And so that TID 7 projects total about $4.4 million. And of course being funded by the tax increment in that district. TID number 8, that is our Rapids East Commerce Center TIF district, and that's on page 129. The project that's proposed there is the 48th Street repaving project and widening of the intersection of Commerce Drive. And so there's maybe a half mile between the corporate limits there, within the city's corporate limits, that we've got the 48th Street repaving project proposed for. That's at a cost of about $320,000. And the last budget item that I'm responsible for is the stormwater administration budget. That's on page 144. And it's just a slight increase there, but this budget is really the administration of the stormwater utility, going through any redevelopment of properties and adjusting utility utility fees or charges for those improvements, or in some cases, you know, if the property's raised, a reduction, and as well as things that are part of our DNR stormwater permits, such as illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction and post-construction erosion control, and that also includes education and outreach. I guess with that's a summary of engineering-related budget accounts. So certainly if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Going back to your curb and gutter, what would happen if we didn't do that much next year? I mean, is there something that happens to the streets or something if that water backs up, or?
No, I don't think there's anything critical that happens. Obviously, in areas that hold water or don't allow the water to drain, you know, there is further deterioration of that portion of the pavement and curb and gutter. But it is somewhat subjective. You know, the proposal that we put together is primarily to try to get a budget amount that will cover us in the 12 maintenance areas. Two of the 12 maintenance areas to get caught back up. But, you know, presumably after one cycle of the getting through the maintenance areas, we'll have gotten all of the worst case deficiencies. And I would assume that the quantities would start to decrease the second and third and fourth times through. But certainly it is somewhat subjective.
Thank you.
Alderperson Tim, the point of that is to, you know, we're gonna spend the money to go through and put that new surface on and the chip seal. It has happened in the past because we haven't really had a plan where we go through and put that chip seal on, and then 2 years later, we're saw cutting a patch into it. I mean, there's nothing that stops us from doing that right now, I mean, because you have a water main break or something like that, but it's just trying to get all of the maintenance activity done and then putting that new surface on it, and then it's, you know, good for that duration is really what the intent of it is. That's all.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm assuming there's no further questions for Mr. Eichstadt? All right, thank you, Joe. On to item 4, which is next meeting date. So what we're looking at right now for meetings coming up here of finance, we have the regular meeting of the Finance and Property Committee on November 4th. If that agenda's not out, it will be coming out. We're going to have Building and Parks at that alongside our regular agenda. And then on Thursday, November 6th, we are going to perform our final review of the budget. And I believe that conflicts with Public Works, so it's tentative to start at the conclusion of Public Works.
I won't be available on the 6th, FYI.
Okay. The reason, so the availability of the council chambers is really what it is. So I would say, yeah, if anybody can hear that, there is a broken wheel on a cart out there. But it's the availability of the council chambers that has put us in that spot for that. If we were to move it to another date, we would be holding the final budget review in a conference room, of which is probably not going to be adequate for the meeting. So if you wanted to have someone sit in for you, or
I can do that, you bet.
yeah, I talked through this with the clerk yesterday, trying to see where we could fit, and unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of this, but being that it's the council chambers, it is booked for court and other things. So that's kind of where we're at, and the public hearing is still scheduled to be on Monday, November 17th. Anything else on the upcoming meetings?
What was going to be discussed on the 6th? Can you explain that?
We're gonna do the final review of the budget, which means we're going to recommend a budget to council. So out of that will come what the finance committee brings forth as a budget. And then it'll be up to the mayor or the council president if they want to hold anything in between that and the public hearing. But at the Tuesday Common Council meeting on November 18th, we will adopt a resolution for the tax levy and the city budget and the Waterworks and Lighting Commission budget. So that's how the next few weeks play out. Anything else? All right, thank you, everyone. Meeting of the Finance and Property Committee is adjourned at 6:32 p.m.